So I told myself I wasn't going to use until I went over there and ate. But by time 11 o'clock came, I was already high.
When I got back to my room that morning, I'm sitting there looking out the window and I could see the kids going to school, and I got to think to myself, if I don't get this mental illness and this substance abuse issue under control, I'm going to spend the rest of my life here and I'm going to die here.
I was actually outside and I heard a thump in the house, which wasn't unusual, and my daughter came running out and she said, "Jordan's having a seizure." So I have a son who is a recovering addict. He's 22 years old. He has spent probably the last 8 years of his life as a drug user, so he started really young. He dabbled in drinking, he dabbled in smoking pot. The turning point was when he overdosed on Xanax and had a seizure at my home, and my daughter found him. That was the most horrible day in my whole life. At that point in time, I told him he could get out of my house or go somewhere for help. He chose to get help. Everything went well for a couple of years. Came back to his hometown, right back down the slide again. Got into some trouble, got arrested. At that point in time, I left him sitting in jail, and he chose to get himself back to treatment, which has been a godsend so far. So I was actually outside and I heard a thump in the house, which wasn't unusual, and my daughter came running out and she said, "Jordan's having a seizure." And I, of course, ran upstairs, and we were both holding him so that he wouldn't hit his head, the usual stuff that you do. We called 911, and when he snapped out of it, it was like he was not himself. I mean, it was like he wasn't even, there was nothing in his face. He was combative, ready to fight. It took several EMTs and first responders to kind of coax him down and to get into the ambulance. He was able to walk on his own. But, you know, his face was messed up from hitting the floor and rubbing on the carpet. He had bit his tongue. I mean, it was awful, and I never want to go through that again. I know my son's using started with mental disorders, which 20 years ago we weren't really familiar with, you know. He's since been diagnosed as bipolar with severe anxiety and depression. He's on medication to control those now. I know that the first time that he took Xanax, he's not into opioids, his benzos was his drug of choice. He just wanted to feel numb. He did not want to feel any of the emotions that were coursing through his body because he didn't know how to deal with them. And I think that is the way with 95% of people who are addicts. They just want to numb the feelings that they're having. The first time my son went to rehab was sort of a forced situation. I told him that was his option to go or to not have a home with me. He decided he'd go. I got one of my good friends to ride with me, God bless her to this day. On the way there, Jordan was trying to reach his highest high. He was smoking a blunt, and he actually was snorting Xanax on the way there. He was trying to just, I guess, not experience and remember any of the trip there. And like I said, once I knew that he was picked up and in the with the recovery center, I had not slept that well in years. The first stint in recovery went really well. He got all the way through, lived in a sober living facility, had a job, and then he decided to come back to his hometown, which probably was a mistake because he did come back and get into some trouble. But when he got in that trouble, I did the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and that was not get him out of jail, but just let him sit. So he took it upon himself to find a way back to treatment. He contacted someone that he knew, and they got him back there. By the grace of God, so far, it's one day at a time, but he is doing much better. Like I said, I would never give up on him because he is my child, and I will love him forever. That's the thing about addiction, is you can't control the person. It has to be their decision. You can't wish or pray for somebody to get clean. It has to be on them to make that choice. I thought it was just drinking a little bit and smoking pot, which I don't really have a problem with. Of course, anything can be used in excess. But the day that he overdosed and had the seizure was the day that I realized it was out of control. It wasn't manageable. He was doing whatever he could do to get his next fix. You know, it caused fits of rage and pretty much narcissism in him when he was using. It was everybody else's fault. No, you know, he didn't want to take the blame for anything. Now he does. He knows that it was him that caused all of his own problems. I just want people to realize that it doesn't matter what kind of upbringing a child has. Things are going to happen. They're going to be offered stuff. It's a terrible epidemic right now. If there's one takeaway from any of this, is any addict you see walking down the street is a human being and is somebody's family member. That is somebody's child, somebody's brother, somebody's sister. We have got to stop looking at people like they're just worthless. They didn't choose to be addicts. Maybe they chose to use the first time, but after that, it's not a choice anymore. They just have to have it, and they'll do whatever it takes to get it. Lying, stealing, hurting people. It's an ugly, ugly disease. It doesn't know status, it doesn't know race, it doesn't know anything. It can happen to anyone. And it can happen in the blink of an eye.